Welcome to the Story Copywriter Podcast, the show that teaches you everything you need to know to write stories that sell and become the written voice of a business you love. With me, your host and founder of Story Copywriters, Rob Drummond.
So as a business owner, I hang out in a number of online communities, and often the questions in those communities will come back in the context of email marketing and nurturing your list and communicating your value and building an audience of people who trust you. Ultimately, a lot of the questions come back to the tech. So often these questions are phrased like, which email marketing system is best? Or is .mailer or .digital better than Klaviyo? Or is Keep better than ActiveCampaign? And I sometimes, because I'm in the email marketing space, admittedly more as a copywriter than a tech person, but sometimes I'm asked these questions directly. And I kind of do this. You can't, for anyone listening, you can't see what I'm doing, but I'm pointing my fingers to my head and I go, right, calm down. Let's go back a few steps and ask, well, what is it that you're trying to do? And I think more recently, I've tried to stop answering the question. I used to venture a few opinions based on tools that I was familiar with, but even then, I've become a bit paranoid about my own biases and leading people into the wrong choice, because I'm fully aware that if you make the wrong choice and select the wrong system, that's a whole lot of missed opportunity. It's potentially a big rabbit hole that's quite hard to extract yourself out of. So I thought it'd be good to invite Gareth Everson on today. So I've known Gareth for a number of years through the Infusionsoft community. So I was for a period an Infusionsoft certified partner. Gareth, I think you still are an Infusionsoft certified partner. Yes. So we know each other from that world. Gareth, unlike me, is an absolute systems expert. I just play at kind of being the systems person. I'm really the copywriter who kind of can dabble with the tech. So I thought, because this question of tech keeps cropping up, I wanted to explore it properly and in a grown-up way. So Gareth, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Rob.
I always ask people, to share a slice of your story in terms of how you got into doing what you're doing today, and talking through what your business currently looks like.
Well, let's do it in the sort of very high level view, because it's been a mishmash. But to summarize, over the last 11 or 12 years, I've spent my career working in the CRM, marketing automation, email marketing, and I guess systems space. And in that time, as you say, Rob, I've been an Infusionsoft partner or Keep certified partner, still am to this day. I've also invested fairly heavily in developing my own software product at a time 6 years ago when I fell out with lots of the main protagonists in that space, your Infusionsoft, your ActiveCampaigns. I didn't think they were going in the direction that European customers really wanted them to. So that was 6 years ago. And then more recently, as I've decided to focus back on being a systems consultant a little bit more, I'm now a high level, or go high level as it's known as, agency partner. And not only do I implement high level with my own customers under the brand Lemonade Plan, and I'm sure we'll come on to that, but I also mentor agencies, accountants, franchisers, associations and training companies around how they can implement systems, CRM, automation, and automated processes for the clients that they work with. And that brand is called CRM Growth Systems. So an eclectic mix of things that I've done over that 11 years, but the consistency has been always working around processes, systems, and helping small businesses primarily get to grips with tech that helps them to automate more operations in their business.
Just before we started the call, we were talking about there being a difference between systems and software, and I wondered if you could talk about that for anyone listening.
Yeah, I have a huge chip on my shoulder about about software being referred to as systems. The true definition of systems is, or a system, is a group of processes that are together. Whereas the software industry, with all of its $1 million of marketing budget, has tried to position their own individual software product as a system, which is often, if you think about a product like MailChimp or even Infusionsoft or HubSpot even, to think of one point solution that is software as system, based on the definition of a system being a grouping of processes, it's incorrect. And so when we talk about systemizing, it's about bringing together processes in your business and running those in a more automated, in a more scalable, in a more repeatable way. So yeah, anybody that calls software or a piece of software a system, I'll generally pick them up on that.
So the software companies have kind of hijacked the terminology.
I think so. Yeah. Big PR budgets. They've hijacked that terminology, thinking that, you know, let's say for argument's sake, when they're selling MailChimp, that is your system for marketing communications, and it's really not. It's really not. It's a tool that does email marketing.
It's more like a hammer, whereas the hammer in itself isn't going to build you a wall or fix a picture to the wall. That's going to require a system for actually using it.
Yeah, it's a really good analogy. Really good analogy.
Good. I will try to watch my terminology then during the rest of this call. So if someone approached you and asked you the type of question that I gave in the beginning, you know, which email marketing software do you think is best? How would you respond to that, or how would you kind of deconstruct that question?
I think I'd want to break it down into what are they looking to systemize? What processes in their business are they looking to make more effective? It's all very well having, you know, to use your analogy, the best hammer in the business, but if you haven't got a clue what you're doing with that hammer, what DIY project looks like, and my DIY generally looks like that in my own home. If you don't have a clue what the purpose of that is going to be, then it's pointless being able to say one email marketing point solution. And in terms of getting businesses to think about what those processes might be, they need to think about those 8 core customer processes in the business that are summarized in my methodology, Lemonade Plan. And it's an acronym. I love an acronym, Rob. I don't know if it's appropriate to cover each step just now, or
so your book is called Lemonade Plan, and right. Lemonade, each letter stands for a system that people need to think about when they're planning this whole enterprise. So what does each letter stand for?
Yeah, so if we think about a business and its systems, you've got the acquisition and the delivery systems. You've then got the delight system. So there's 3 core sales and marketing systems that you think about in your business: how you acquire, how you deliver the work, and then off the back of it, how that delight that a customer should have is recognized. So what are they doing with that? And then the processes that sit within those 3 systems make up Lemonade, the acronym. So L is all about leads, how you generate those leads and how you capture them into your CRM. It's probably going to be a CRM in this day and age, some sort of digital format, capturing them via web forms, via phone calls that come in, via some sort of opt-in into your business. So that's the L, the leads. Then, as you and I know, Rob, because we both have worked in this industry for such a long time, getting a lead doesn't mean that lead is going to automatically turn into a customer of their own volition. What we need to do with them is educate them around taking that next step with them. That might be email marketing. It might be some direct mail, which is very close to your and my heart. It might be media like this, podcasts or videos.
It could be a book.
Could be a book, indeed. Yeah, absolutely. But that's all part of the education process.
Could then most business.
What's that?
Yeah, it could be an event.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Then most service businesses, which is who I work with, probably want to have some form of sales appointment with a client, and that's the M stage, the meeting. So how do we build a lead up towards being interested enough to book some time with you in your diary and take that meeting? That's the M of Lemonade. Then if all that's gone well, and you feel that there's a mutual benefit to working together, you're probably going to make them an offer to work with you. That's the O. So how do we make them a compelling offer that's profitable for you, that's valuable for them, and that's going to lead to them becoming, the N, a new client. And when they do, and this is where, and I use the analogy about fizz in lemonade, this is where most of the fizz disappears from a lead becoming a client. You've done all of your work to attract them, to nurture them, to educate them through that process, and to wow them. And when they become a new client, they're at the highest peak of their delight in wanting to work with you. And yet, as soon as they buy, most businesses will just kind of switch off and move on to the next opportunity, or the experience that somebody has having spent money with you kind of falls off a cliff. And to use the lemonade analogy, that's where a lot of the fizz disappears. So the new client process is all about welcoming them on board and keeping that same level of delight and expectation and enthusiasm in the process as you start to work with them.
I was thinking that actually for a lot of agencies, sometimes you might have different people selling the project that are then onboarding the clients. So you don't have it's like the client has sold the dream, and then as soon as they sign on the dotted line, it gets shunted down to a more junior member of staff.
Isn't that absolutely classic? Isn't that absolutely classic? There's then a complete mismatch, not only of the tone of voice of who they're working with, but also the experience that they're having. And to use your example then of it being an agency, which is a setting that both of us know, it actually can involve quite a lot of work for the new client to come on board. They're sharing the brand assets, they're helping them with their tone of voice, that kind of thing. Yep. It's a real disconnect in that experience for a new client. So N is all about the new client. If you onboard them well, then the A is all about add-on services. How do you upsell or cross-sell other different services that you perhaps recognized in the sales process, but you haven't explored with the initial offer? So that's all about the A. How do you maximize the value of that relationship, not only for you, but also for them as well? D, unfortunately, lemonade is spelt this way, and that D is towards the end. D is all about the delivery. It should probably come before the A, but how do you deliver that project and properly fulfill all of the expectations that client had when they signed up? And then E, finally, is where we all want to get to, and that's about receiving endorsements for your work. Endorsements being reviews, referrals, testimonials, that kind of thing. So that's lemonade, and it's those 8 core customer processes. Most agencies are focused on the L and generating leads for their clients. Most solopreneur businesses or micro businesses are very much focused on those first 3 or 4 steps from lead through to making an offer or signing up the client. But if you're not getting the reviews, the referrals, the testimonials, and the endorsements that you really want in your business, I'd challenge you to think that you're probably missing a couple of processes along the way, and where the fizz is disappearing. That what your expectation of them as a client is that they'll give you positive reviews and referrals and all of that kind of thing. And if all of that's missing, it's probably because you've missed some key parts of those processes along the way.
I have a couple of comments. One is that I think the marketing service industry focuses on the leads part, because most clients think they have a leads problem, when actually the problem might be in the onboarding, it might be in the fizz, it might be in the retention, it might be somewhere else. But it's easier to assume that the problem is external rather than internal. So I think consequently, a lot of the marketing industry probably caters to the leads. It's easier to sell. It's easier to sell Facebook ads projects than it is to sell an email marketing sequence. That's just my experience.
It's where most small businesses think they've got a problem, right? And yet, I mean, you're an expert in this space, Rob, and you've written books on the topic about nurturing and education and building that rapport and that relationship with your clients is ever so important. Most small businesses devote too much attention to that first step and not to the subsequent 7 steps, really.
Yeah, and you might already have all of the leads you already need. You don't have systems to stay in touch with people until they are ready to buy. Like I previously described this as being like in your business, you have a buying list and a waiting list. And the buying list are the people who are ready right now, and we focus a lot of our effort onto those people. But then you need systems to cater to the waiting list.
Yeah,
and actually, the waiting list is going to be much bigger for most businesses. Unless you have a very specific business like a locksmith or something where it's very much catering to people who are locked out of their cart right now. The number of people who might be ready to buy one day is usually bigger. So often you actually have enough leads, especially if you look back at everyone who's become a lead over the last few years. It's like, well, what actually happened to those leads? And often,
I'd probably phrase that slightly tighter. You had enough leads, probably, rather than saying have enough leads, because somebody that was a lead 3 or 6 months ago, if you then follow up with them 6 or 9 months later for the first time, they probably don't even remember you or don't care that you've got in touch so late down the line. So in actual fact, they were a lead, but they are no longer.
Yeah, there's like a period of time after someone first opts in to pour cement around the relationship. And actually, if you do that and do a good job at that, and then you go quiet for 9 months, and then you get back in touch, people do still remember that initial interaction. You've got a better chance of kind of rekindling that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you drop the ball in the first instance, I think it's quite hard. People just don't recognize they don't even recognize your sender name when the email comes in.
Yeah, exactly. I'm working with a lot of agencies at the moment, and the number of them that will, in effect, offer a lead generation service for their clients that ends with the email notification of somebody's opt-in into your inbox is staggering. So they might not even, apart from the acknowledgement that this lead has had on the opt-in form, or perhaps on the automated generated email that goes from your Gravity forms or wherever to say, thank you for opting in. That might be it. That might be all that they've received from you. So when you stick them in your MailChimp list 3 weeks before Christmas to send out your once a year email that says Happy Christmas to all of your, in inverted commas, list, they don't remember who you are, and they've forgotten your offer. They've forgotten why they got in contact with you in the first place. And guess what? They'll probably mark you as spam.
Yeah. Well, it's not a list, is it? Like, it feeds into this idea of the list size being, almost like a vanity metric, and it doesn't actually stack up, because it really comes down to the engaged list size, like how many people have actually engaged with an email in a sort of recent time frame. What is that number? How many have opted in?
Yeah.
Like, I used to have a client that had a list size of about 100,000, but actually they talked about this quite publicly. And then when we got into it, there were only 21,000 that were opted in. And of the 21,000, there were, say, 13 or 14,000 who were kind of engaged. They actually had a flame score. I guess what we got from that was that was still big enough to do whatever they wanted to do and launch all the products that they wanted to launch, but they didn't have a list size of 100,000 contacts.
Of course it wasn't. And their perception is probably, oh no, our leads are drying up. We had 100,000. We need to generate, let's say for argument's sake, 10 or 20,000 every year to replenish that list. And in actual fact, they probably really don't. It's probably a tiny fraction of that, of new leads that they need to bring in, fresh leads that they need to bring in to present their offer to them.
Yeah, it was like they viewed it as new blood. Which is a terrible way to look at contacts coming into your email list, as new blood. It's like, you're going to need a lot of new blood if that's how you're going to treat contacts. And essentially what they did was they bombarded the list, and they were only focused on the buying audience, not the waiting audience. They had no real interest in nurturing the waiting audience. So it was nag, and they'd send sort of 5 emails a day. And for some people in the buying audience, they bought.
Yeah.
But I think they drove away a much bigger number of people, which created a lot of pressure on the lead side to keep adding new people in when I don't think they actually needed to do that.
Yeah, it sounds like they're in hungry zombie mode, the new blood concept. You don't really need to be, do you, at all? I'm conscious we haven't answered your first question of which email marketing software would I recommend, but
we'll
went
get to
down
that.
a little bit of a
So,
rabbit hole.
Yeah, I have one other comment on your Lemonade system, and that people start off by thinking that they need an email marketing tool, and actually email marketing could potentially touch all of the areas that you've described.
Absolutely.
The leads, the nurture, the meeting, the offer, the add-on, the delivery, the endorsements. It touches all of these things, and it means that you start off thinking that the project is, this big, it's in quite small, and actually you realize that it's 10 times bigger, but potentially a lot more valuable.
Yeah. Potentially. Or that you're starting with the wrong question in the first place, instead of which email marketing software should I buy, what the question that you should probably be asking is, based on my processes that I have, my sales and marketing processes that I want to manage, which CRM sits best in the hub in order to be able to manage those other sub-processes of being able to communicate and do email marketing. Yeah. How can I make my offers? Is it on a web page? Is it in quotes? Is it over a meeting and a handshake? How am I meeting with those people in the first place? Am I meeting online like we're doing now on Zoom? Is it a face-to-face invitation? Am I going out and perhaps doing a quotation with them in their home? There's all sorts of different factors that go into it. But if you start with the question of which email marketing communication software should I be using, you're probably asking the wrong question in the first place. You should be thinking about the hub of the wheel, which is your CRM product.
So CRM, could you define that? I mean, that presumably is a customer database that kind of sits at the heart of this, like a memory almost.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good analogy for it, a memory. But to use your phrase about the buying and the waiting lists, it's a place where you can manage not only all of your customer information or your lead information, your contacts that are on there, a contacts list, but also be able to segment them based on where they're at. How recently did they opt in? Are they in buying mode? Are they in waiting mode? Are they an existing client, a past client, or a lead or a prospect? What kind of activities are they interested in? How do we segment them that way? It's a place where you can store that data and segment it so that you can manage those contacts in the right way based on A, what they want to hear from you, B, what they want to buy from you, and C, where they're at in that buying cycle.
I think if you were like a one-man band, and let's say you operated a market stall and you sold fruit and veg in, I don't know, High Wycombe market every Saturday, and you knew all of your customers face to face, you would have all of this information in your head, in your own memory. Well, obviously with people coming to you digitally, your business doesn't have a memory de facto. So you need a system to memorize these interactions and how people have interacted in the past and what data they've given you. And then based on any subsequent digital interactions, you might want to trigger certain events or certain communications by email or by another channel. So it's kind of replicating that offline, that much, I say simpler, but it's kind of replicating and scaling the offline version.
Yeah. And it's giving you that memory bank of where somebody's at. So instead of being in that scenario that I described about how most marketing agencies will leave the lead process at the notification email that they send to you, here's a new lead. Actually, what a CRM does for you beyond that is not only does it put that information in a consistent format in one place, but it also brings together all of those other lead sources that perhaps you're generating leads from, whether it's by phone, text, direct mail response, whether you're going and finding leads yourself and doing a colder outreach to them initially. It's somewhere to keep all of that information in a consistent way and in a way that befits the processes that you want to manage for your sales and marketing cycles.
It used to drive me a bit nuts that people would often choose to use MailChimp because it was free. And I don't think it actually is free when you count up all the time that you're that you invest into setting it up. But then you wouldn't actually have a singular view of the contact because it was list-based. So a single contact submitted 4 different forms on the website. So suddenly they exist 4 different times in MailChimp. So then not only are you being billed 4 times, but there isn't actually a singular view. Do you think that's quite important to have a kind of a singular view of the contact?
Yeah, I think it's ever so important. I think if you don't have that singular view, then you end up in that scenario that you described with that client where they've got 100,000 leads in inverted commas or 100,000 contacts, but they don't know anything about any one of them. And MailChimp can definitely send you down that path. In fact, their whole value model is around building multiple lists and growing those lists. It's not necessarily about turning those lists into paying customers or repeat customers even. It's a bit skeptical on MailChimp. It's actually a really good product for what it does in that contained way. Yeah.
I don't want to overly bash it.
It's a well-designed product for sending an email, but there isn't a context to the contacts to whom you're sending those emails.
And normally what I would argue is that a lot of people aren't even doing the basics. Like a lot of people aren't sending any emails at all to the people who've expressed interest in the past. So even if you're just using MailChimp, because it minimizes costs, and you send a weekly email to anyone who's filled in a form on your website, you have a single list. I think that's okay as a starting point. That's 100% better than not doing anything. So
yeah, absolutely, 100%. 100%, especially if you are in that scenario and you write to everyone, bearing in mind you're not segmenting them, but if you write to everybody in the tone of they are an active client and you're saying the same kind of things, even to relatively cold leads that you would say to your regular clients, sharing the same insights, sharing the same tips, I think that's definitely a step above not doing any communications at all. It also gets you into the habit and sharpens that saw, if you like, of communicating, of doing better written communications, and that's no bad thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think it takes a bit of practice. I've kind of been sending regular communications since 2016, and I went through a phase of sending very frequent communications, and I've kind of scaled it back because I kind of took a decision to kind of put more time and value into what I was sending out not quite every day, but I think there's a case-by-case situation there, but I think it does take practice, and I think it acts as a filtering mechanism as well, because it forces people to make a decision on you, and the people who resonate with those communications and the people who share your values it encourages a regular reading habit, and they will start to look out for those communications, whereas the people who are never going to buy eventually will unsubscribe. And that in itself is quite a good outcome.
Absolutely. One of my best successes as a niche that I've worked in is the physiotherapy niche, or physical therapists, if you're listening to this in the US. And you and I are both amateur athletes, aren't we, Rob? And when we get a little niggle or back pain or knee pain or ankle pain or something like that,
I've got so many niggles at the moment.
I bet you have. You're freakish running barefoot, which of course is healthier for you, isn't it, Rob? But anyway, that's a side topic. But physios who do marketing communications really well recognize that people like you and I, when we get a niggle or a pain, will actively look for solutions online for exercises or for strategies for removing that pain. And if you're there as a physio when they go and make that search, and you're putting your ebook in front of them with 7 great exercises for knee pain or something like that, they're happy to opt in on that, because it gives them a free way of being able to cure that pain on their own. But as the very best physios know, most people will work on the model that maybe the pain will go away in 2 or 3 months' time, or in a few weeks' time, it'll be gone. I'll do some of these exercises, the pain will be gone. But good physios will be following up probably on a weekly or maybe bi-weekly basis, just literally poking that pain with more content. How did those exercises work out for you? Here are some more. And then following up a week or so down the line with some additional content, perhaps then seeding 3 or 4 emails into it, a little idea of, oh, why not come in for a free consultation and we'll see where you're at.
There's an 80-20 power curve in there where some proportion of the group will spend more to have the problem solved at greater convenience, faster, with a better service. So you're trying to figure out who those people are.
Yeah, of course.
You'll never figure out who they are if you never send anything.
Correct. And they'll never come back to you, because the next time that they feel that pain, they'll probably go and Google almost exactly the same thing in a slightly different way and find information from somebody else. So it's ever so important that you go from if you are in that sector, that you go from a point of not doing any communications, or assuming that just because they've opted in to get your ebook, your 7 quick ways of resolving knee pain ebook, that they're going to then remember you in 3 months' time when it's still not solved, if you've not communicated with them since. So you've got to keep that that communication flow going.
I want to go back to when you chose to develop your own software. So that system integrated to Xero, was that a requirement? So in terms of people having like the CRM system as the kind of memory piece of the business, is there an argument that some of the memory in terms of what people have bought in the past might exist in other places, might exist in the accounting system, for instance?
Yeah.
And maybe there are some integration questions that people need to think about when selecting a system.
Yeah, so I had a theory 6 years ago that the next step for small businesses in terms of using software to manage those systems and processes in their business was that they'd want to bring together how they did sales and marketing, managed by a CRM, but also sending out email marketing, direct mail, that kind of thing. So that would be a CRM, sales and marketing, but they'd also want to tie that together very closely with their bookkeeping and accounting and their financial reports, so that they could see the effect that those sales were having. Were they profitable? That kind of thing. And I started Connectably with a view that it would be the first CRM and marketing automation software on the market that worked in so many different ways with Xero, and joined up those 2 pieces of software so that you could see really transparently what the effects of your sales and marketing were, and which activities were genuinely profitable, that kind of thing.
There are other people doing this. I used to work for a company called ProspectSoft, and they integrated to Access Dimensions as one. I think they've actually been bought by Access now, but they integrated to like Sage 50, Access Dimensions, Iris Exchequer, and it was with the idea that if you had stock in that system or stock levels, and you wanted to make that information available, or you got information in a product file that you want to make available to a customer-facing team, and it kind of pulled the information from the accounting system through to the CRM system. So I don't think it's a completely new idea, but
no, it's not. I think probably one of the big issues that we face is, especially if we're targeting small businesses, is that we assume that audience that's out there, and the millions of small businesses that are out there, know that they have potentially that problem that your solution, in your case, or in my case, the Connectably solution, that it solves for that. And I think either we were too early, or didn't phrase that problem well enough, or just didn't get enough traction in the face of some really, really big software competitors that had far deeper pockets for marketing budgets and attention seeking. Our little software business didn't really make any inroads in terms of mind share on that topic.
I think the first thing you said is probably true, where in terms of Eugene Schwartz and his levels of awareness, you're speaking to people at step 0 where they've got no awareness. They've got no awareness that they're even bleeding to begin with. So you're trying to point out the bleeding to them.
Yeah,
it's quite a long road.
Yeah, it really was. It was probably a good idea, but either at the wrong time or with the wrong budget. Learned a lot from it though, Rob.
Yeah. How does that relate to So Lemonade Plan, you now work with High Level, and obviously when choosing to partner with High Level, what were the kind of criteria that you were looking for? And did you kind of take a kind of fairly wide analysis of the different options?
Yeah, so one of the things that I'd learned through implementing Connectably with our users was that this concept of linking together all of your marketing and sales processes so that the end result was that your clients would give you raving testimonials or reviews or referrals at the end of it was probably, outside of the whole software piece, one of the biggest success stories of Connectably. Our most active users got really good at managing that end-to-end process. And in the latter days of Connectably, I played around with a few ideas around could I turn that into a training program? Could I turn it into a book? Et cetera. Where would it go? I knew that the software product was likely to come to an end. I was looking at alternative. I'm a software person. I'm a tech person who loves having conversations with business owners about how they can improve their business processes, especially around sales, marketing, and sort of customer success. So I knew I wanted to stay in that space, and I knew that I wanted that there was a bigger picture around helping these small business owners to understand that they actually, instead of just looking at leads, they needed to look at the entire picture of sales and marketing processes in their business. And I played around with a few acronyms, but Lemonade seemed to be the most fun and most engaging. And so the brand Lemonade Plan came to fruition, started as a book idea, which still hasn't been published, and is now sort of a website concept and a software product on the back of it. Why I liked High Level as a software partner for it is that I knew in terms of managing those 8 processes, leads through to endorsements, that High Level would be able to manage, or components of High Level would be able to manage all of those key components within it, which was great. Because not only could I train business owners on understanding those 8 processes, but give them out of the box, if you like, the chassis that they needed to be able to systemize those 8 processes in their business. Obviously, the words that they would send out in their communication would be very different by client, but it gave them a basis on which to build. And the other reason I liked High Level, just from an implementer's perspective, from me as an agency, is that it's a really well-built piece of kit, but gives us as agencies a means to be able to brand it in a way that we want to, and to put our own flavor on it. So for me, it was Lemonade and those 8 processes. For others, it's about serving a particular niche or presenting things in their own particular way. I really like the way that they'd not standardized around one fairly bland and generic front end. They allowed us to customize it in a way that was relevant for our audiences. So that's how those 2 ideas came together, Rob.
You think there's a trend in the kind of software space to cater to a specific vertical? Like you mentioned that you're really catering to service businesses, and that you might have different partners who are, say, using something like High Level, but another business might cater to engineers or to garages or to something else. Do you think that's kind of the way that the industry is going? By
way of industry, you mean like the marketing industry?
Yeah,
agency type
there
model?
will be a software solution for a particular vertical that again is customizable, but the chassis is kind of in place where you're not starting from, say, the blank canvas, if you like.
I don't necessarily know or think that there's necessarily an industry move towards it, but I do think there's a real need for it and a real opportunity for it in this day and age. I actually think, and I hate to talk about COVID, but I think the way that COVID impacted the economy and the way that we want to work and our relationship with working on big agency teams versus perhaps being a freelancer that's focused on, or solopreneur, call it what you like, that's focused on a specific audience, really lends itself very well to targeting specific niches, or if not a particular niche, then a specific problem. So whilst Lemonade Plan caters for service-based businesses that have longer decision cycles or non-immediate decision cycles for their customers to buy, there are other agencies in the high-level space that are a lot more focused on a particular niche, be it plumbers, be it builders, be it marketing agencies themselves. It does lend itself very, very well to do that, because as well as the underlying chassis and the software that's in there, you can then add another layer that comes with each account that you launch. They call it snapshots, where it has everything from web content through to email content through to text message templates, a whole gamut of things that you can basically launch when somebody buys your software subscription. That gets loaded into their account right from the start. So I think that lends itself very well in their space for a niche audience, but comes at the right time as we are facing a marketing agency economy that's being very disrupted by teams not staying together, by the growth of marketing freelancers, through the interest in people working more flexibly, whether that's flexibly, lifestyle-wise, or flexibly client-base-wise.
The last thing I want to talk about is, I think there's someone investing in an email marketing tool or CRM system. I think there's potentially a factor of intimidation where people sometimes select the simpler and probably incorrect tool because they are maybe correctly intimidated by the work involved or their level of expertise in using it. I mean, when we did more with Infusionsoft, there was always the joke about people buying Infusionsoft and it being like the Ferrari that sat in the garage and never went anywhere. Do you, in terms of this Lemonade Plan, do you think there's scope in terms of prioritizing? Well, where is your first problem that you're going to solve, and solving that first, but then building a system in a way where you're not limited to solving that problem, that you can expand it to the other areas?
Yeah, just to address your first point, the scenario of people being confused or put off by experiences that they've had in the past around a CRM or an email marketing software that's maybe not done what they expected it to do when they hit buy on the web page of whatever it was that they were buying. They were expecting to give their card details and then for it to be set and forget for their business, which is absolutely, as you and I know through having worked with clients, it's not what happens. There's a lot more work involved in that. I do think actually, and maybe this scenario is changing. I do think that most marketing agencies, if we think about them particularly, I do think that there are very, very few that are out there that will happily pin their colours to the mast and say, for our clients, we're going to recommend this as a solution, and be really confident with that. You speak to marketing agency owners who will say that either they don't recommend software for their clients because they don't want to support it, or they're at the other end of the spectrum and are pulling their hair out because they're supporting hundreds of different apps for different clients that they've worked with. They're not making any money in terms of referral fees. That's all going to big software companies in subscription revenues, and they're just dead frustrated. It's difficult to support with stretched teams. It's hard to find expertise who can understand what Pipedrive does versus what Keep does versus what ActiveCampaign does, for example. They've got clients that perhaps want to use HubSpot because somebody's told them that it's the best thing since sliced bread, but that only applies to maybe 2% of their entire client base. The rest of them can't afford it. And so they're in this challenging scenario of, well, what do we recommend? Do we recommend something or not? So I think there's definitely a marketing agency perspective around why the end business user is frustrated at having bought a CRM or an email marketing service because they've felt like they've had to do it themselves, but then haven't had the training or the knowledge or the insight in order to make the best use of it. And so one of the goals of writing the Lemonade Plan book is to give these business owners a blueprint, if you like, of things to consider before you buy a CRM, before you buy an email marketing piece of software. What do you need to think about in your business to manage those 8 processes effectively? Once you've got the answers to those questions and you know what those processes then should look like, and it's at that point that we then choose the software that's going to manage those processes for you. I think the problem comes from lack of awareness and lack of knowledge on the small business owners' part, but also a lack of appetite by marketing agencies, probably over the last decade, as this software market has ballooned, to really stick their colours to the mast and say, we're going to implement this with you.
Yeah. I think it's not even just saying we're going to implement it with you. It's that we're going to kind of help you build a body of documentation that documents your processes as they are outside of the software.
Yeah, you're amazing at this, Rob.
Because then that's going to, like, if the software vanished tomorrow, what would you actually be left with?
Yeah. You're very diligent in that space. Like, with exception to most people that play in this marketplace. At most, some people will put notes in the CRM or the marketing software itself, but I think your answer to that solves that problem of, well, what happens if you decide to not use that software anymore? What happens if they suddenly get bought out by, as MailChimp did, by Intuit or somebody massive like that, and all of a sudden change, not that MailChimp have, but maybe change their model overnight?
Yeah, I mean, just a quick comment because we're running out of time, but like I have a couple of levels of documentation. One is in Lucidchart, another is in Airtable, with more detail going into Airtable. And then I currently use ActiveCampaign, but that is more the mechanism of how that is then implemented.
Yeah, nobody's perfect, Rob.
No, I mean, do you have some equivalent of that? Would you recommend doing something like that?
So not right now, I don't have, but the book is going to be the first part of that. So being able to help people to understand what those processes are that they need to build. And then I'm weighing up options at the moment as to whether it's some sort of membership portal where they can draft what those are for themselves in a similar way to your Airtable Lucidchart model, or to be more prescriptive and have, say, a page within their software that shows them the full breakdown based on a consultative discussion of what we're going to implement by way of those processes in that business. They all have their benefits and drawbacks, don't they?
Yeah, I agree. So when is the book going to be published, and where can people find you online, and how can people stay in touch?
Let me answer that second question first. They can find me and register for the book at lemonadeplan.com/book. And I think I've made the wording on there generic enough that I'm not committed to a specific date for launch for that. But if you want to register your details, as I say, at lemonadeplan.com/book, I'll get you a copy of that when it comes out. I'll even cover the costs of the postage and packing, just for your patience of registering now. If you are in the agency space,
you've got a waiting market there, not a buying market, I think.
I've got a waiting market. Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely in that space. Have you noticed that I've failed to answer your second question of when's it coming out? I don't know as yet. If you're in the agency space, then go check out crmgrowthsystems.com. And that's my offering around mentoring agency, franchise, accountancy, business coaches, associations, to set up that kind of systemization for your end clients, using the knowledge that I've built up over the last 11 or 12 years to help shape and structure a program by which you can really help your clients to do it properly. So that's crmgrowthsystems.com for that.
Okay, I'll make sure those are in the show notes.
Thanks, Rob.
Great. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Rob. It's been
Cheers,
fun.
Gareth.
If you've enjoyed this episode of the Story Copywriter podcast, you'll want to make sure you're on my email list. When you sign up at storycopywriters.com/podcast, I'll also send you my 7-day storytelling crash course free by email. Please also make sure you've got a copy of my simple story selling book, which is available from Amazon in paperback and Kindle formats.
Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you next time.